Hello, I'm Nan Simonson. I'm a health and wellness coach, and I am working now 6 years with a lifestyle medical practice. And what is the difference between lifestyle medicine and I'll use that other word, allopathic medicine? Well, the difference is that in lifestyle medicine with our physicians, they don't ask for a symptom that they can then prescribe to. Um, they look at our doctors, lifestyle medical doctors, look at how we live our lives and the possibility of making changes there before they start prescribing medications that simply, I'm going to say, mask the reason we're sick in the first place. Well, we look at pillars of health, and those pillars of health include nutrition, they include movement, they include community, they include rest and prioritizing of sleep. And so the things that I talk about in this PowerPoints weekly presentation are based on PowerPoints as it relates to, in other words, powerful points as it relates to lifestyle as medicine. And today I'm going to talk about mentorship that falls into community and the influences that we have on other people, that they have on us. Usually when we're talking about community, we're talking about our the effect it has on us of someone who cares about us, loves us, is concerned for us. And we're going to take a slightly different bent on that because we're going to be talking about influencers. Can you see that? I've got a little burn, lifted my hand up in the oven while I was getting something out. Takes a second. So I'm going to begin with a PowerPoint because this subject and the importance and value of it was brought home to me this last weekend. I went to an event that, except for the worst of the COVID years, I've attended yearly, and it is a reunion of those of us that were part of a company called Humming Boyd Sales. Their last name is Boyd, B-O-Y-D. And so that play on words. And some of you know, if you read Aging Powerfully, even though the book is not a memoir, it's really I think it's a fundamental layout of the principles of lifestyle medicine, but there is a memoir in there where I was and where all of this has taken me and what it is that made the difference. But in this book, I talk about the fact that I had a 4-month-old and it was difficult for me not to have something that drew my attention away from something that I lived with that made life difficult, and that was an eating disorder. And so I thought, boy, I need something else just to, I'll say, distract me. And so I went to a Tupperware party. They said, you should sell. I started selling, and the rest was history. We ended up owning a Tupperware franchise. I was with them for almost 30 years. And this is the person who lit my fire the moment I walked into the meeting room at Humming Boyd Sales. I'm going to introduce you to Sylvia Boyd, and then I'll use that as a catalyst to go through what I mean by mentoring and influencing, and we'll see it from there. So I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. And okay. So we're talking about mentors, the power of influence, and actually those words can be synonymous. A mentor can also be somebody that's an influencer, and I found that the mentors in my life made all the difference. The first one I remember was when I was a young kid. Well, no, I wasn't a young kid. I was 17, and I felt like a nobody and a nothing. And this woman in a business room said to me, you know what, you're smart. You could probably do anything you wanted to do with your life. And I took that to heart. Another one was a university professor, Dr. Chu, who asked me to work in her lab for the summer, and that made me feel like a somebody. Well, the third person is this lady here. Now, her eyes look wonky, but that's because she's smiling, and we took one of those photos, one half open, one half closed. But this is Sylvia Boyd. She is 90 and a half years old. And this last weekend, I attended one of her yearly reunions. She retired from her Humming Boyd sales, what we call distributorship role, and that is warehousing the product. Gosh, what, maybe 20 years ago, maybe more than 20 years ago, but she has kept bringing us together. And I'm so grateful for that. When I met her, these are her daughters. Well, my son was 4 months old, so I was what, 27. I'm 73 now. That's quite a long time ago. These are her two daughters, and that is Sylvia. And her daughters are, I don't know, 5, 10 years younger than I am. And then Sylvia standing here at 90. She still helps people find themselves. This is her speaking at an event at her church. Just a few months ago. And she is still in a leadership and a mentoring role, although she's no longer formally working. She has the ability to speak well. She has the ability to look past people's differences, and she doesn't judge anybody. When Sylvia, and I'll get back to that, when Sylvia first met me, she met somebody who couldn't speak in front of a crowd. She met somebody who had no self-confidence. She met somebody who didn't really believe in herself, meaning me, and she didn't see anything but somebody who was interested in becoming better. And that magic that she had to look past, uh, let's say imperfection, and teach and train uh, in ways that others couldn't because she was so highly successful. Everything she taught from her own experience. She began selling Tupperware when those girls I showed you were, oh, I don't know. I think Lorna was 1 and Leslie was 2, 2.5 or something like that. And so everything she experienced, she learned from and taught from. The person in the background on the left-hand side of Sylvia's head, or I don't know which way you're looking, in front of that tapestry you're looking at. Her name is Cheryl Eastman. I've known her since the day I walked in those doors in 1978. And she still is coming to the reunions, and she still actually does sell Tupperware on the side. Okay, so let's go on then. This is somebody I met in Tupperware. She's an influencer at 90 years old. This person, Judy Goodman, was 90 years old there. That was a while ago, because this is Judy on her 106th birthday. I was there with her. I brought her flowers and that present, which was a framed photo of her when she was the leader, the leading salesperson, the leading manager in our company, decades and decades and decades and decades before that. And this is Judy this weekend. This person, Jenny Swenson, standing above her with her head on her shoulder, left our meeting, our reunion, went to see Judy and took this photo. So Judy is 106. She can still hear. She had a stroke, and so she's a little bit, well, I'll say less dynamic, but she is still thinking well. And Judy reminds me of the importance of doing what we know how to well without having to try to make a point of putting that knowledge into anybody else's either vocabulary or behavior. Just setting a good example can be all it takes. And that's what Judy did. She was phenomenal. at helping people grow a business, at helping people demonstrate, at doing it herself. She would show us at our sales meetings in the demonstrations she did. And I still remember how I looked up to her, as I still do today. That's another influencer in my life. So that was Tupperware. This is now. This is Chef AJ. We were at Rancho La Puerta together. I was her sous chef for some classes that she was doing while we were there, oh, several years ago. This is Tammy of Nutmeg Notebook. She became an important influencer. I was at Chef AJ's house and Tammy was there. She became an important influencer because she taught me, first of all, Chef AJ taught me how to make whole food, plant-based eating work for me. Going whole food plant-based is another thing that changed my life because it helped me. I've said this again and again, and I said it in my book, recover from an eating disorder because I no longer feared the foods that are healthiest for us. That's whole food plant-based foods that are highly starch-based. We were taught, I was taught in decades before that, that starch was dangerous, whereas the reality is starch is nature's appetite suppressant and, quite frankly, antidepressant because of the effect it has, whole food starches, on our microbiome and the effect the microbiome has on our neurotransmitters. So Tammy taught me how to make things in the Instapot. She specialized in that, like oat groats and certain stews and soups, and how to make chopped salads that I still have to this day, 6 years later. This is a lady named Deborah Sakey. She has a place in history because she is a young woman, began as a secretary for a much older professor, and his job, Dr. Sakey, was to, because he believed in natural foods and natural medicine, was to teach people how they could live longer using nature. Well, ultimately, they fell in love, and I think the age difference was 25 or 30 years. They fell in love, they got married, and he was an immigrant who would have had to have been sent back to his country. I believe it was Czechoslovakia. There was civil war there, and he certainly would have been recruited into the army and possibly died. So instead of going back, he couldn't stay in America. They were going to send him back to Czechoslovakia. He and she went to Mexico, right inside the border at Tecate, and they created something called Rancho La Puerta. This is Deborah Sepe today. She just turned, well, this may have been a year or two ago, but she just turned 100 years old, and she's still teaching people the value of natural foods and natural lifestyle. And Rancho La Puerta is now, is it 80 years old now? As a destination health and wellness spa. And again, I'm leaving on Saturday. Chef AJ is there, and I'm going to spend a week with her, and my husband's going with me. And Deborah speaks every week on Wednesday if she's in town, if she's, well, I'll say well enough. And I'm hoping to see her again. I missed her birthday, which was in May, and I'd love to tell her happy birthday now. So all of what was given to me, whether it was overt or not, was something that I then felt the responsibility of, and that is to spread the word. I believe with all my heart, when I see how, how damaged our society is health-wise, from the increasing numbers of obesity, 70% of our population overweight or obese, which leads to metabolic syndrome, which leads to diabetes, which leads to heart disease, etc. I say to myself, it doesn't have to be that way. So taking from these people I've shown you, taking from what I learned at Rancho La Puerta, taking from what I've learned from Chef AJ, whole food, plant-based, salt, oil, sugar free, or salt, oil, sugar low, I wrote my book just before turning 70, and that was 3.5 years ago, to say it doesn't have to be that way. We can age with power. And I hope that I have the ability to pass that on. So let's talk about what that looks like. I'm going to get myself back on here. Okay. And stop screen sharing. One of the things we first have to appreciate is the value of a mentor. What a person who can share their wisdom, their experience, their encouragement with us can do in terms of forming us. I don't, and I said this and it sounds dramatic, but I mean it. I don't believe I would be the person I am today if it weren't for Sylvia Boyd. Going into her company, watching her, hearing this articulate, beautiful woman um, express belief in the possibilities that anyone, she doesn't have a college degree, and yet she rose high enough in her own company, highly successful worldwide, that the company made her president of sales in several countries that she started up Tupperware in. And she became highly, highly successful after she left her own distributorship. So to watch a person do what they're going to do and be willing to share it is part of what mentoring looks like. It means that someone who is desirous of growing, of expanding their own knowledge, of maybe desperate for um, uh, self-confidence, all of that can be part of what a mentor can offer someone. They can impact our lives in a profound way, shape our perspectives, boost our confidence, and help us reach our full potential. That's what Sylvia did. And I owe her so much for that. The lasting legacy is what we're talking about now. And that is how we then can pass that on and become a mentor. First of all, if you look at what it takes to let's say allow someone into our sphere uh, and encourage them to simply ask for some guidance means that we have to be open and approachable. Being open and approachable doesn't just mean making ourselves available to others, but it also means that a good mentor is as good of a listener as they are a talker. As a matter of fact, they may listen more than they talk. They hear a person, they understand their needs, and then they offer guidance. A good mentor shares their experience, both good and bad. I find that a lot of what we do wrong or what we learn from what we do wrong is what can help people shape their behavior, sometimes even better than hearing about someone's successes, because at a point they start believing they can't measure up. Encouraging and challenging. That means encouraging people to try to believe in themselves, to step forward, but it also means encouraging them to push beyond their comfort just a little bit, and then a little bit more and a little bit more, so that they can see that indeed they have what it takes to break through what they consider their own barriers. We encourage independence. Mentors encourage people to learn and become successful independently without always holding their hand, and teaching them to make their own decisions and trust that they can trust themselves to make good and right decisions. Mentors must be patient and consistent. In other words, patient enough to allow people their own pace and their own time. I rose rather quickly in the company. I had a company car because Tupperware for decades offered their managers, qualifying managers, a company car. And I qualified for a car within 5 months, and I drove one the entire time that I was a Tupperware manager until my husband and I qualified for and bought our own Tupperware franchise, our own distributorship, which was about 7 years later. Some people grow and, let's say, gain the confidence and the knowledge at a faster pace than others, but a good mentor doesn't rush the process. They let it unfold as it will, and they are consistent with their support. Their support doesn't wane, and they don't give up on the person as long as the person is still trying. Being a mentor can have such a lasting impact that anything that we can do when we are setting an example, showing what success looks like, showing what confidence looks like, showing what right decisions look like, not by bragging, but by having what other people want. I want what she has. We put ourselves in a position to inspire people and to change lives, even with nothing more than a few words, like Mrs. Crummer when I was 17 saying to me, and I said it was at a business meeting, well, or a business location. It was at my father's art gallery. And if you know my book, you know I lived in a storage room there, very lonely year. And I could only come out when there were no clients because my dad wasn't crazy about the way I looked. I was a little too fat. And so I had to sort of stay out of view. And I was sitting on a stair going down to the main gallery because, well, the gallery was closing. She had just come to pick up something that she had purchased. And she asked if she could sit with me. We talked a little bit. It was really painful because I didn't know what to say to her. And I thought, oh gosh, yeah, I felt really uncomfortable. The lady's got her Rolls Royce outside. And then she stood up and she said, you know, Fernanda, that's my name. You're smart. You could be anything you want to be. Just as I said, she said. And that was the first time I thought, maybe I've got something that I can work with. Isn't that interesting? Influencer, mentor. She said a couple of words, took a piece of art, and walked away. That's all I have to say. Consider who has made a difference in your life. Consider how you can play it forward. Consider one of my favorite ways of inspiring people. When I had my own Tupperware distributorship, I had thousands and thousands of salespeople. I had 50 to 100 managers at any given time. At least 2/3 of them had a company car that my husband and I supplied to them as distributors. And the way I described my strongest tool to help develop people was this phrase. I would spend most of my time catching them doing something right. So many times we, without meaning to, focus on what people do wrong instead of looking. And sometimes it takes searching, and sometimes that we have to just kind of wait for it. Catching people doing something right, commenting on that. People want to be acknowledged, and they'll try and they'll do it again and again. And that's how a person is built. That's how I was built. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Subscribe to my channel. Give us a thumbs up. And I hope to see you again. And thank you for joining me. Have a great day because no, I'm going to. Bye-bye.